Welcome back, Chaos Crew. This is Proffee and Chaos. I am your host, Jamie, aka the Sleeved Dietitian. So I'm so excited to dive into the topic of my weight loss surgery journey with you today. So settle in, get cozy, grab your Proffee because we're going to have some more caffeinated combos. So I didn't want to jump into this podcast without at least telling you a little bit more about who I am. Again, this is the podcast that I created. I'm your host. I want you to know more about me and my journey. Now, some of you may have been following me since day one. Like, I know that I have friends on here who, we connected back in 17 when I was pre-op. Just, like I said in the first intro, like just getting support was why I was in that space. And then some of you might have just discovered me. So wherever you're coming at, I just want to give you like a recap of my journey, especially because this recap of my journey keeps growing. So I've talked about my journey quite a lot when I've been guests on other podcasts or I've done a lot of like live speaking events. I always give the backstory, but the backstory keeps growing because this journey never ends. I actually talk about that in my book, The Easy Way Out. I'm sure at a future date I will dive into that a little bit more. But I kept procrastinating on writing the book because I didn't want to write the book until I felt like my journey was done. But it's never done. Spoiler alert, you just keep going. Things keep evolving. But I'm coming to you now in 2025 recording this. And I'll be 8 years post-op this December, which is wild to think about. But weight loss surgery was probably to this day one of the hardest decisions I ever made. So rewinding, taking you way on back, I have struggled with my weight my entire life. And that's not an exaggeration. I struggled with childhood obesity. I was over 200 pounds by the time I was like 10 years old, 9 or 10, which was rough. It's crazy that I struggled so much, especially because my mom always cooked healthy food. We always had homemade meals. My sister, who was 4 years younger, never had a weight problem. We did the same activities. It just was always hard for me. So growing up with childhood obesity absolutely left a very lasting impression, specifically on my confidence, on how I felt about myself. And I felt like so much of me was focused on my weight. My mom did a really, really great job of never focusing on it. My parents did. I feel like there were other people in my life who would make comments, specifically like my grandmother or just other people. Like it wasn't a secret. I was like, it's not like I didn't know that I was overweight. I very much knew, I very much was aware, I very much was insecure about it from the time I was really little. And I think it really impacted who I was, but not just who I was, but who I felt I had to be. Like I ended up growing up just like really quiet and really shy, but like looking at me as an adult, it's very different. And I think when I think back to like even my teenage years, I think part of why I was so shy is it was like a defense mechanism. If I can just blend in and no one notices me, no one can make fun of me. So that definitely played a role in how I just showed up in my life. But on top of being 200 pounds in like the fifth grade, I also grew up thinking I was really tall. I'm not. For anyone wondering, I'm 5'3". I say 5'4". I'm not 5'4". Also, Lilo's here. Hi, Lilo. There you go. She's a good girl. You're going to see lots of Lilo appearances on this show. But I'm 5'3". Technically, I think I was like 5'3.5" most of my life. I would round up to 5'4", but then when I lost a ton of weight, like I definitely shrunk a bit. You actually lose fat mass in like your feet pads and like your head. So I'm like a nice 5'3". But I've been this height since I was in fifth grade. I shot up really quick. And I was 200 pounds. So I was literally like, I was much larger than I am now in fifth grade. So I always grew up feeling like huge. I just felt so big, especially amongst all of my friends and cousins and everyone else in my life who didn't struggle. So that was hard. And the weight just kept climbing throughout high school. When I was 14, I was diagnosed with PCOS. I was actually very fortunate that my pediatrician, she was pretty fresh out of school for being a doctor. And that was actually to our benefit because she was up to date on a lot of the newer research at the time. So she actually knew like the signs to look out for. So when I was 14 years old, between being even heavier on the scale at that point, I kept rapidly gaining weight. I had a lot of other clinical indicators of PCOS. For anyone who doesn't know, that's polycystic ovarian syndrome. And maybe we'll have a whole conversation at another point in time. But I had like the dark, like insulin patches, like behind they're not called insulin patches, but it's, like, essentially from insulin resistance, like, dark patches behind my neck and under my arms. I had really bad acne. I got my period, like, super early. It was super heavy, super irregular, just all these things. So I'm here in Connecticut. She sent me to a clinic over at Yale New Haven Hospital. It was, like, a PCOS clinic, and it was, like, I was there for, like, 8 hours. I got a whole workup. I had ultrasounds and all sorts of blood tests. Like, it was just, like, a very intensive day and experience, but I officially got diagnosed with PCOS, which was its own double-edged sword. All right, Chaos Crew, you already know how much I talk about being a new mom and juggling not only that aspect of my life, but my post op health and life after surgery. And I honestly can't even tell you how many times Hungry Root has saved me in this season of life. They are the most incredible grocery delivery service where I know that when I use their groceries, I'm getting really healthy, high protein, easy to use ingredients sent right to my door. And honestly, now that Oliver is eating real food now too, it's just they've grown so much with me and my family. I started using them when I was just 1 month postpartum and has absolutely been a game changer. Whether I am using the ingredients they send me from scratch to create one of their amazing meals with one of their recipes, or I'm just grabbing one of their ready-made options, I always have something for dinner ready to go for me and my family. And for right now, they are offering Proffee and Chaos listeners 40% off your first order when you use the code CHAOS at checkout. So don't forget, you can head to the link in the show notes. You can grab your first grocery order, which, like, hello, 40% off of groceries. Amazing. Make sure you go and do that. Use the link, use the code so they know that I sent you. On the one hand, it was really great to have answers of like, why do I just keep gaining weight no matter what I do? And I was 14 when this happened, but up until this point, like I had definitely tried diets. I had been on Weight Watchers. I remember in seventh grade, me and my mom would wake up early at 4 a.m. and go to the gym before I went to middle school. And I actually have vivid memories of then falling asleep on the bus because I was so tired. But I had begged my mom to let me go. Like I was just always so like trying to lose weight, desperate to lose weight, counting calories at a very young age, not knowing what I was doing. It was just like not a great situation. But I had answers once I got diagnosed with PCOS of like, okay, I have this syndrome. This is why. And that was actually a really hard diagnosis to get at that age. When you're at that age and you're like that heavy, you already feel very isolated. You already feel like the odd one out. So getting this diagnosis on top of it didn't help because at that time there wasn't social media and no one talked about these things. I didn't have any friends in my friend group who were overweight either. Like I just felt like a freak. I'm like, what? What's wrong with me? And also at 14, being told, oh, yeah, and you might never have kids because you might struggle because of PCOS. But that was also like, it's hard to take in when you're 14. So it was sucky, but I also was like, okay, well, there's a reason. And it gave me a little bit of relief of like, okay, it's not my fault. It's not my fault that like I'm this way no matter how hard I try. And that also became tricky because then it gave me a reason to feel like, well, I'm completely powerless. I can't lose weight even if I try. Nothing will work for me anyways. What's the point? So I was in a constant like binge restrict cycle throughout most of my teens and early 20s. And I was in my second semester of college and I was commuting to school. I spent 1 year on campus and then transferred home. I hated living away. I was not a social butterfly. I didn't have friends. I didn't really go out. Like, I didn't date in high school. I didn't date in my early years of college. Like, I just studied and worked. That's what I did. But when I was commuting from home to the local college I was at, I was also waiting tables at a restaurant and working. And I remember struggling so hard walking across campus. I would be late to class because I couldn't make it in time. Even some of the desks I like didn't properly fit in. And I remember one of my classes was on the third floor of the building, but it was a really old building. So it was one of those floors where it's like the first floor is after a flight of stairs. So it's like you're on the ground level, a flight of stairs one, flight of stairs two. And it was a really old building and there weren't elevators, which like I think since then they've updated it, like that is way like out of code. But at the time, that's what I had to do. And I can remember getting up to the top of the stairs, being drenched in sweat, huffing and puffing, like out of breath. Like I remember one day having to get up and go walk in the hall because I was like, like could not breathe. And I couldn't like, I was like distracting the class. So I remember saying to myself, okay, even if I never lose another pound for the rest of my life, I cannot keep gaining at this rate. I legitimately was terrified of what my life would look like if I didn't stop gaining. So I had finally gotten to the point where I was like, okay, I don't even care about losing weight or being skinny or whatever my priorities were back when I was like 19 years old. So for the first time in my life, I committed to making healthy habit changes without the focus being just weight loss. So one of the things I didn't give myself strict rules. So up until this point, I would always be like, okay, no carbs. I'd been put on like an Atkins diet when I was which is like a keto diet when I was 14 and diagnosed with PCOS. I had done so many restrictive things and I knew it didn't work, but again, I had no nutrition knowledge at this point. Another key piece of the story is when I was going to college, I was actually going for English and education with a minor in art. I wanted to be an English teacher. Writing has always been like a huge thing for me. So I didn't even have it on my radar that I wanted to be a dietitian. But I was like, okay, time to get some things in order. So one of the things I did is I started journaling out my food. I wasn't counting calories. I wasn't like counting portions, but I was like, okay, if I eat it, I have to write it down for accountability. And that helped give me a better sense of how often I was eating, like what I was eating, being more mindful. And I started really committing to drinking more water and going to the gym consistently. And in that year, first year of doing that, I lost about 50 pounds and I felt really good. It was the first time I like did it, right? And then it went from and, like, full trigger warning, I'll put this in the show notes too, like, I like, trigger warning for, like, disordered eating, but I ended up going from this place of making really positive, healthy habits to then taking it to an extreme. So over Christmas break that year, after losing the 50 pounds, I put, like, a few pounds back on. I wanna say it was, like, 6 or 7 pounds, and that little bit of regain over the holidays freaked me out. I was like, "No way in hell over my dead body will I let myself regain this weight. Like, will not happen. Absolutely not." So I went harder than ever. I was being what started off as healthy just got it's like, okay, well, how much more? How much more can I restrict? How much more can I take out? How much more can I go to the gym? And I would eat like next to nothing. Like I would go all day and my day would be like half an apple and a cup of coffee. And I proceeded to lose another 20 pounds. So I had lost 70 pounds at this point. And everyone is showering you with compliments. Everyone is telling you how great you look, how good of a job you're doing. And again, I was like 19, almost 20 at this point. I didn't have any nutrition education. I'm like, yeah, thinner is better, skinny is better. So that ended up really wreaking havoc on my entire system because I was overly restricting so much and working out so much, and I was waiting tables, going to school, running on like nothing. But it started to like majorly affect my sleep. And the whole time, like no one really, my mom knew my mood was off. I was living at home, but other than that, no one knew what was going on. I was very reactive. I was very frustrated. I can remember like even my mom saying like on Easter one time, she's like, Jamie, just have some dessert. I was like, no, you don't understand. Like I can't. It got to a point where it was really bad. But what happened was I was over restricting so much that I did end up like messing up like my sleep cycles. Like I couldn't sleep. And the sleep deprivation combined with the over working out, under eating, like made me go like a little crazy. I was at that point, my mom was like, you need to talk to somebody. So I went and I started seeing a therapist for the first time and slowly started to get better. And I will say the disordered eating leg of my journey is still to this day, all these years later, one of the hardest things to talk about. This was back in like 2012, 2011. So it's still something that's like hard to talk about and even reflect on. Started getting better. And then I was like, you know what? I want to help people not have to go through what I went through to just because dietitians I had seen up at that point just told me to eat less, move more. And clearly that got me in a really dangerous spot. So I was like, you know what? I want to go to school to be a dietitian. I didn't really know what it involved being a dietitian. I just knew I wanted people to like eat healthy. So it was like a culture shock when I changed schools, changed majors. I would have graduated ahead of time with my degree in English and being a teacher because I had so many credits from like AP classes in high school and stuff. But I set myself back like 3.5 years because I had no science classes. I didn't realize how heavily science and evidence based nutrition was. But I went all in. I transferred. I started going to school for nutrition and dietetics. I became one of the tutors on campus, tutoring anatomy and physiology and all the nutrition courses. I didn't know anything about science up until that point, but I thrived and I loved it. And I continued, to do really well in school, to be like a leader on campus. Like I found what I loved, but I did always feel like the odd one out, like the fat girl in class, because even though I was getting healthier and understanding nutrition better, my weight kept creeping back up because I got there by being overly restrictive. So by the time I graduated with my degree in nutrition and dietetics and went on to do my dietetic internship, which is basically your like clinical residency. Anyone who doesn't know, going to school to be a dietitian is quite the intensive like process. You are like one course away from being considered pre-med. You have to do a 1,200-hour clinical internship. Like it's a lot. But by the time I got to my clinical internship year, which was like a year away from being able to sit for the exam and become credentialed, I was back up at my heaviest weight. I had gone back up to so the heaviest weight I ever saw on the scale, again, trigger warning for anyone who doesn't love numbers, but the highest I'd ever seen was 270 at like 5'3". However, I'm pretty sure during a period of time when I wasn't weighing myself, I was closer to like the 290 mark. But 270 is what I always talk about for my highest weight. But I was back there and I felt awful. Again, here I am going to help other people with their weight, help other people with their health journeys. And I myself couldn't even get my own weight under control. Yet again, here I am back in this place of feeling just like the fat girl. And it sucked. So it was that year I was like, you know what? I'm going to actually consider weight loss surgery. And I had considered weight loss surgery back in high school. I am not even exaggerating a little bit when I say I have literally tried every single protein powder out there since I had my surgery 8 years ago. And for the first time, I am actually being super consistent with drinking my protein shake every single morning. And that's because First Form has been a game changer for me. It is the first protein powder that I actually enjoy drinking every day. I personally love their caramel latte level 1 flavor protein powder. It is incredible. It tastes so good. It is smooth, creamy, and only has the highest quality ingredients. It is not made with any fillers. It is just an epic product specifically for bariatric patients, and it's been a total game changer for me. And you guys know that this podcast is called Proffee and Chaos for a reason. I'm always grabbing my Proffee and running out the door, and First Form makes it possible for me to still live this chaotic life and hit my needs. So make sure you check out the links below, that you check out all of First Form's products. Again, level 1 is my favorite. Also in the show notes below, you can get my favorite Proffee recipe using First Form. I wanted the lap band at the time, and my mom said no. And I remember being really upset with my mom. I was like, why can't I have weight loss surgery? And she's like, you're too young. In retrospect, I am really glad that she didn't have let me do it back then because I wasn't ready. Some people are. There are people who have surgery when they're really young. No, just knowing what I know now about all the things I learned about myself, I'm glad that I waited until the point I did. But I was 24 when I had my weight loss surgery, still young. But I ended up deciding to have VSG, the vertical sleeve gastrectomy. Probably hear Lila snoring. She's snoring over here. And I remember going on the consult because you had to do like a seminar and like a consult before you could even start the pre-op work. And I remember like bargaining with myself. I'm like, okay, Jamie, you're going to use the next 6 months in this pre-op period to get serious, to lose the weight. And if you can prove to yourself you can lose even 20 pounds in this time, we're not going to have surgery because you can do it. I gained during those 6 months despite my best efforts. I still got approved. And I had like a wonderful dietitian at my center who like really documented how hard I was trying. But again, with the PCOS, the stress, I was doing my clinical rotations. Like it was just like a crazy year. And I was like, okay, I do need this. And I had so many limiting beliefs around surgery. I believed the stigmas around it, that it was the easy way out, that it was cheating. I had to really challenge my own beliefs. And I've talked about this before a little bit on social media, but I was one of those people before surgery where I really thought that weight loss surgery was cheating. So like in those years when I was losing weight naturally, as we know, not necessarily healthfully, but without surgery, I really thought that if people didn't do it that way, they weren't working hard enough. Like they were cheating, that it wasn't fair that they were getting results without having to do the legwork. That was my own bias and I didn't know better. So I had to really challenge that belief that I once had to accept that I needed help and a tool. Now we know now that that's not the case. It's not some easy way out. Talk about that all day long. It's the name of my book. And but back then I had a lot of heavy feelings around it. I felt like I was doing something wrong and I felt like a hypocrite because I felt like I should have been able to help myself if I was ever going to help somebody else. So I felt like a bad dietitian already before even starting my career. But I had the VSG, and even though I had so much anxiety leading up to this. So if you're watching this in your pre-op or in that pre-op phase, like no, it's okay to be scared to death. I was scared to death. I did not know one person who had weight loss surgery in my life. The only people I'd like heard of who had it, didn't even know but heard of it, was all horror stories of like, oh yeah, so and so's sister's cousin, I know she had surgery, she gained it all back. Like it was all stuff like that. And at the time, there were very limited resources online. There was the bariatric community that kind of existed. I shared that previously, that integrating myself into that space to make friends and connections was huge for me. And I had also gone on some local weight loss surgery meetups. There was a couple influencers at the time in the community that were doing them. And that was really helpful for me because I got to meet some of my best friends. Some of those girls are still my best friends. Like I did get to meet people in the space, and that was really positive. But up until that point, I was really scared. And I had my weight loss surgery. It went beautifully. and it worked. I was losing weight consistently. That first year was definitely really hard, but really fulfilling. From my highest to my lowest, I lost 112 pounds in that first like year and a half. And I was smaller than I had ever been. I felt good. I kind of thought my problems were solved. I also have, again, I've had to continue to challenge my own thoughts and beliefs on this journey because at that point in time, being successful, quote, successful at a year and a half post op, I remember thinking, how does anyone even regain? Like, you got me, like, again, my my dumbass was like, yeah, you people who regain must just be not following what they're supposed to do. And I was a credentialed dietitian at this time, by the way, guys. I was a year and a half post-op, about six plus months into my, dietetics career. And I was doing so well with this tool, feeling that restriction, not having food noise, not struggling, being able to go to the gym and do the things and do it well. I really thought it was going to be that way forever. And I can remember, again, we all judge, we all have biases, even if we don't realize it. So, like, again, I'm sharing this with you because this is how I thought back then, and I have evolved so much, so much since then. Like, the universe humbled the hell out of me because I remember thinking, if you regain after surgery because this tool just works so well, you must be doing something wrong or not following the rules. And the perfectionist overachiever in me like really thought that because I followed every rule. I was the like, no, I am going to do this right. Even though looking back, some of the bariatric post-op guidelines I was given are a little bit archaic now, in my opinion. Like now I see that maybe they actually maybe weren't the best thing. But I did like my post-op diet was so restrictive. To this day, I can honestly say, and I've worked with thousands of weight loss surgery patients. I can honestly say that my post-op diet was one of the most restrictive I've ever seen. They didn't even want me having cheese because they thought it was too high in fat. They literally wanted me having meat, veggies, and up to 1 ounce of fruit per day. That was my post-op diet. They didn't want any nuts. They didn't want any nut butters. They didn't want like nothing. It was you will eat your protein and that's pretty much it. And even though I was a dietitian at the time, they're telling me, and my bariatric dietitian and all these people are telling me like, no, if you want to be successful, this is what you have to do. My surgery center never gave me calorie goals, but my calories were probably 600 to 800 calories per day that first year. But again, I'm in the honeymoon stage, which at some point I'd love to do a whole episode on the honeymoon stage because nothing about the honeymoon stage is easy. But I was in that like grace period where the tool did the work for me. But because I was following all the rules, I'm like, no, but like I'm doing the work, which to an extent, yes, I definitely was. But I came up on the crossroads that I think all of us come up on. And this is not meant to scare anyone who's early on in their journey. It's meant to be, again, super real and transparent about what happens for most people. You kind of come up on a point where it doesn't work the same. Like, yeah, like I still have restriction, even 7.5 years out. Like my portions are still smaller to like moderate. They're nowhere near what they were in that first year. But my tool still works if I use it. Let's just put it that way. But I got to the point where I was like, oh, wait, I'm hungry again. Oh, wait, I can eat more. Oh, wait, why am I craving cookies again? Oh, wait, why am I stress eating cookies again over my sink at the end of the night? And I was like, oh, okay. So I realized like, okay, there's other work that needs to be done too. I was in therapy the whole time, but like these conversations came about more and more in therapy, but I definitely came up on a point where I struggled. And then I had gained back from my lowest. I had gained back like 7 to like 8-ish pounds, which was like barely a regain. It's like that little rebound weight, but I was fine there. But I remember thinking like, okay, I'm still not happy. It's got to be the skin. It's got to be the loose skin. So I finally decided I was going to do plastic surgery, and I ended up having, and I will go into detail on like my plastics at another time, but I ended up having a full tummy tuck and breast augmentation for the first round of plastics. And even after all that, I was like, oh, wait, I'm still not happy. That wasn't it either. And I started to realize, okay, I got some more inner work to do because weight loss doesn't just solve all your problems. I know. What a revolutionary thought that is. But I really thought that being thin would solve all my problems, and it didn't. It solved my weight, I guess, to an extent, but there I was still struggling with it. But I I still had shit I had to work through and deal with, and that was like a tough pill to swallow, that just losing weight and getting the skin removed wouldn't just suddenly make me happy and solve all my problems. And then what I found in years 2 to 3 post-op was maintaining that loss, even with that little bit of rebound weight after plastics, was immensely difficult. Doing the things I did in the beginning were not working. Trying to keep the calories and calories low, protein high was not working. I was constantly thinking about food again. I was constantly worried about food again. I was constantly worried about my weight again. That like blissful freedom I felt of the scale continually going down and not gaining weight was gone. I suddenly was worried again, I'm going to gain all this weight back. And from my lowest post surgery weight until the time, well, it was like, what year is that? It was like 2022. One of the biggest things I talk to my clients about is the fact that surgery, as much as it is physical, is also super mental and emotional. We can have our stomachs removed, bypassed, whatever, but we cannot bypass or remove the parts of our head that need work. And this is why I am constantly referring people to find a bariatric therapist. This is an incredible, incredible platform created by my friend and colleague, Ashlyn Douglas Barnes. She is a licensed bariatric therapist. She had weight loss surgery herself, and it is so incredible what she has put together. It is a free directory. It costs you literally nothing. And you can find licensed bariatric specific therapists licensed in your state. So make sure you check it out. As a dietitian, I help you with the food, but we always need to be incorporating the interdisciplinary team so that you get the well-rounded support you need. Check it out below and let us know your thoughts. I had my surgery in 2017. It was the end of 2017. It was December 2017. So like 2018 to 22. By year 2022, I was back up. I gained about 28 pounds back from my lowest. Now, in the grand scheme of things, is that detrimental? No, but I was really upset about it. And I was so upset about it because I was trying so freaking hard. I was back to tracking, even though I hated tracking my calories and I hadn't done it since like the early post-op days. And again, guys, I'm a registered dietitian. I am a registered dietitian who like knows the things and helps other people, and I'm struggling yet again. The never-ending story of Jamie's life is that she struggles with her weight, right? So here I am again, struggling, feeling even more like a hypocrite at this point in my career because now I only work with bariatric patients to help them. And I shared all this transparently, but it was like super sucky. And it really attacked my confidence because the things I thought I knew to be true like weren't anymore. And again, it's shaking up those limiting beliefs of, well, if you do the hard work, it'll pay off. And it was really around 2022 I started to realize the fact that obesity truly was a disease. I went to the ASMBS conference, the American Society for Metabolic and Bariatric Surgery, and I sat in on a lot of panels and I felt like I was in such good company. This conference is mostly for professionals. I think patients go too, but I was in there as a bariatric professional. So listening to other bariatric professionals advocate for their patients and talk about so fiercely like obesity is a disease. It is not a moral failing. It's a multifaceted, multi-layered disease with so many layers to it. There's genetic components, environmental components, physiological components, emotional components. Like there's so many layers to this. So I felt very understood also as a patient there. But I remember sitting on one panel specifically, and this dietitian, and it was a dietitian up there was a couple surgeons up there, doctors, and the whole conversation was on medications for weight loss after weight loss surgery. This was like beginning 2022. GLP-1s were not talked about nearly as like widely at this point in time. So they are specifically talking about GLP-1s after weight loss surgery. And I remember the dietitian up there talking, and she said, what do you do when your patients regain? She goes, not if they regain, when, because pretty much everyone we see is going to regain some amount. Obesity is a disease and it needs to be treated. So what options do we give them when they're still struggling and don't know what else to do? Because you get to a point, you cannot just drop your calories lower. It is not sustainable or healthy to just live on 800 calories your whole life. And this is why some of that regain happens, but it does damage your metabolism in the process. And this is something, if you're interested about, I dive into pretty deep now in my nutrition coaching services because I help people work through that after going through it myself. But it felt very reassuring to be like, oh, okay, I'm not the only one who feels like an epic failure. When I left there, I ended up exploring my options to start a GLP-1. I ended up reaching out to Dr. Nadelsky. For anyone who doesn't know, Dr. Nadelsky is fabulous. And I started working with him in his program, Join Sequence at the time that he had. He has another one now, Join Vineyard, which is wonderful too. But I met with him and I talked to my PCP about it also. My PCP was in favor of starting the GLP-1s, but she wasn't the right person to manage it because of the way you have to like titrate up and down. And also before I had settled on using Dr. Nadelsky, I had also gone back to my bariatric surgeon. And my bariatric surgeon at the time made me so furious. And I loved her for so many reasons. I really did. But she basically said, under no circumstances will I be prescribing medications. And she suggested like a pouch reset. I was like, we are done here. Goodbye. So that was super frustrating and dismissive. So I felt like I really had to advocate for myself, especially back in 2022, to be able to have access to them. But I ended up starting on, and I documented this whole journey firsthand. And at one, probably down the road, I'll probably talk about this even more so. But um, I was, to my understanding, one of the first people to really come out in the bariatric space online and really openly talk about it. To this day, people say the only reason I even explored GLP-1s is because of you. And I remember joking at the time, talking about this on my social media. I'm like, don't worry, guys, I'll take one for the team and I'll share about my journey, because there were definitely other like influencers who later came out and said they were on one, but there were people who were definitely not transparent about it. And again, it's your business. You don't have to be. I want to be very clear, like, it's your privacy, whatever. But people were so scared to talk about being on a GLP-1 because of the shame and the stigma. I came out, I was like, listen, guys, I'm up 28 pounds. No matter what the hell I do, I cannot get this off. I'm going on one. I'm going to document it and you can follow along if you like. I got so much hate from people. It was ridiculous. The crazy thing was, I got so much hate from people in the surgical bariatric space saying, well, if you just used your tool right, you wouldn't be here. Like, oh yeah, you're like, and you're selling your services to coach other people, like, and you can't even do it yourself. Like, it really attacked my insecurities, not just as a patient, but as a professional in the space. But what I've learned is, again, obesity is a disease. I'm not excluded from that because I understand nutrition and because I am skilled at coaching people and helping with behavior modifications. Those things are important and they never go away. But if there's one thing I will always advocate for both myself and all of my clients and patients, it's that we deserve access to proper tools and care. And I'm never going to sit here and say, just buy my services and everything will be fine no matter what. Like, some people need a GLP-1 too. Some people need a revision. Doesn't mean that the hard inner work goes away. And that's what I help people with, is the habits and the changes and the actually sticking to things, understanding how to heal their metabolism after being on these low calorie diets, how to slowly increase your portion so that you are eating enough, but then still able to lose weight. Like, that's what I do. But I will never tell you that you don't need another legitimate tool just by what I'm selling. And that's what really bugs me a lot about a lot of this right now. And part of why I have this podcast to just talk about things openly is so many people are being told to do things that might not actually be helpful. And there's, again, so I'm kind of going on a different direction on a tangent, but in terms of my weight loss journey, I ended up going on a GLP-1, got a lot of shit for it. And I ended up losing not just the 28 pounds. And I started, and to be clear, I did start to lose some weight before starting. Like, I was making all the habit changes. I was doing the same things I tell my clients to do. I just truly needed that extra tool, as do so many people. But I ended up losing 28 pounds, really started to also increase my calories appropriately, started to lift really heavy. I was doing a lot of body composition stuff too. I ended up being able to gain muscle, continue to lose fat. And by fall of 2023, after being on it for like a year and 4 months, being able to, the thing is, the medication made it even more attainable and achievable for me to stick to the things I was already doing. So I ended up losing that weight, and then I put on muscle mass, and like my overall like body fat percentage came down to like 25%. I was in like an athletic like category. I was doing like handstands at the gym. Like, we were thriving. And then I decided it was time to start a family. And I wasn't sure for the longest time if I was going to have kids. I really loved my life, where I had gotten business wise, weight wise. I had 2 other rounds of plastic surgery during that time frame before deciding to get pregnant. And, I wrote a book. I was traveling the country. I was doing in-person book signing. Things were thriving. And I wasn't sure if I wanted to, I guess, mess with that. But I decided, we ultimately decided, yes, let's try. And a big part of me was very scared to start trying because of my PCOS diagnosis. I was always told you might not be able to have a baby. So I was scared to try for something I wasn't sure I wanted, because I was afraid to admit, if I really wanted it and couldn't have it, how hard that would be. And holding space for anyone who struggles with infertility, that is such a heavy thing to carry. And I was really scared of that for myself. I was fortunate. I was able to get pregnant. And I got pregnant, and within 4 weeks of finding out I was pregnant, I was deathly ill. Not just morning sickness, but later to find out I was diagnosed with hyperemesis gravidarum. This also warrants its own episode at some point, but essentially it is a condition you can get while you're pregnant that causes severe nausea and vomiting. There was not one moment my entire 9 months of pregnancy where I wasn't nauseous or throwing up, which you would think would have caused a lot of weight loss, which I'm not smiling because that's a terrible thing. Like, some people get it and they are losing weight. Mine was considered a mild form of hyperemesis because I didn't lose massive amounts of weight. In the beginning, I definitely struggled to put weight on appropriately, but halfway through and towards the end, I did start gaining a lot. I ended up getting preeclampsia. even though I wasn't able to eat much, I was drinking full sugar soda because it was one of the only things that made me feel better when I was nauseous. So from the time I got pregnant until the time and I was a little up from my very lowest when I got pregnant because I had put that muscle mass on. So it was a very healthful weight gain that I'm still to this day very proud of. But from the time I got pregnant until the time I delivered, I gained 70 pounds, which is really scary after finally getting to a low, happy weight, which your lowest weight is not always your healthiest, again. But I was in such a good spot. And then I regained 70 pounds. So here I am. I am 14 months postpartum now, survived my terrible pregnancy. And I did start back up on a GLP-1. I started back up on Zepbound. My son was born June 7th, and it was like the very end of July, beginning of August of 2024, I started back on. One of the things I can say I am most proud of since starting my journey is creating the support for others that I never had. I remember thinking, oh my God, I am a dietitian and I am struggling on this journey with not just what to do, but how to do it to be successful and actually live my life, which is why I created my tribe membership back in 2020. It is the most incredible resource that I offer and the best starting point if you're looking for more support or some of my more nutrition services. It's an acronym and it stands for the Real Insights of Bariatric Eating. And it has so much support in there, not just from myself, but from other credentialed experts. We have therapists, we have a doctor of physical therapy, we have a nurse, we have so many people in there to support you along the way. So if you are interested in more nutrition support and more support in hitting your goals on your journey, that is a great place to start. You can check out the link below and use the code CHAOSCREW20 for 20% off your first month. And there's no minimum commitment. You can unsubscribe whenever you want. But I will say you probably won't want to because we do some epic things in there. I was super mindful with going on a GLP-1 this time around, doing it very slowly. So I very slowly started to increase the dosage again. It's filming this now. It is summer 2025, and we just increased my dose for the first time since last November. And the reason I've done it so slowly is I've wanted to really support my metabolism appropriately this time. And not that I didn't last time, but I wanted to make sure I was losing in a really sustainable, healthy way. And I have, which has been a slower loss. The weight never just fell off for me after having my son. So it's been creeping. But before I got pregnant, and sizes and numbers don't matter, they really don't. But just for a frame of reference, I was in a size 2/4, like American Eagle or Abercrombie jeans when I first got pregnant. I was a couple weeks postpartum. I needed a new pair of jeans, something that fit, and I was back into a size 16. So just for a frame of reference, here I am again, back to struggling with my weight. I will say this time around, it was not so much of a struggle because I knew exactly what to do. I have evolved so much as a dietitian and bariatric patient. I wasn't hyper focusing on the number. I was focusing on fueling, taking care of myself, trying to sleep with a newborn, which is near impossible, all the things. But I am down 55, 56 pounds right now. I am back at a really happy weight. I'm nowhere near not nowhere near. I'm a solid 15 to 18 pounds from where I was pre-pregnancy. And honest to God, if I never lost another pound, I'd be really happy. I feel really happy in my body. I appreciate my body so much more. But the last 7.5 years have been a lot of ups and downs and changes. And the reason I share this all with you is even the people that you might look up to on social media who seem like they have it all figured out struggle. I have struggled so much. I have struggled so much with confidence and self-worth and the scale and obsessing over the scale and feeling like a failure. And again, confronting those limiting beliefs and confronting those biases I had even about myself and what it means to gain weight and being a successful patient or whatever you want to call it. So I don't know exactly where my journey goes from here. I hope you'll stick around and be on this ride with me. But as an overview, that is my journey and I get it. And it's been a lot of chaos, a lot of Proffee, and just trying every day to keep being a better version of myself. Especially now that I have my son, there's more meaning there. And it's not so much just about the number on the scale or a size like it was before. I just want to be healthy for him and for our lives and to sustain the beautiful life that we have. And especially after being so sick during my pregnancy, I think I've developed an even deeper understanding and empathy for people who struggle with things like chronic illness, which obesity is a chronic illness, but other chronic illnesses and diseases and ailments, because to feel like such an outsider in my own body, to be so limited, to be so sick, to be so debilitated now that even though I'm not at my smallest weight or body size, I'm not at my leanest body size. I'm so grateful every damn day for being this healthy. I am so grateful I have a body that can move. I'm so grateful that I can get up and do the things I need to do each day because not everybody has that. And weight loss surgery has brought me all of this. I don't know that I would have been able to have my son without it, with the way my cycles were with PCOS, with all the things I was struggling with. So even though none of it has been perfect by any means, I am in such a better place than I ever would have been without it. To this day, my surgery is the best thing I've ever done for myself. And I will continue to shout that from the rooftops and advocate for proper obesity care and treatment without stigma, without shame, because obesity is so hard. And unless you've gone through it your whole life like I have, you're not going to be able to understand it. But I know if you're listening to this, I am in good company. But this is me and this is my journey. It's imperfect, but still showing up each day, trying my best, doing the things that I can. It's not all or nothing. And that's something that has been really hard to learn. You don't just lose weight and keep it off and ta-da, you're done. You're always going to have these ups and downs and changes and cycles. So that's me, Jamie Mills, the Sleeved Dietitian, your bariatric big sister, bariatric bestie, just here chatting with you over a Proffee and telling you a little bit more about me. Thank you for coming and listening. Until next time, remember, if you haven't already, please like and subscribe to the podcast. Please make sure if you're watching on YouTube, you turn on notifications. Make sure that you follow along on all my social media pages linked below. You can also subscribe to my newsletter email list. You will never miss a thing on there if you want to make sure you don't miss an episode or anything coming. If you haven't already, please make sure you check out my Patreon. The Patreon is $10 a month. It is an amazing way to get some extra bonuses. I have extra episodes on there just for Patreons. And when you're a Patreon, you get to access each week's episode early. This is a wonderful way to support the podcast so that I'm able to keep it going for you. So if you're enjoying this, I would love for you to join. If you are interested in more nutrition support on your journey, if you'd like to learn more about my services, I have all of that linked below as well. We have my free Facebook group with free resources and all the things for you to check out. So make sure you look below. Also, I have an area down below where you can ask questions, give topic suggestions. I want to hear from you. So make sure you reach out. But until next time, Chaos Crew, see you later.